I'm trying to do this like cinematic intro where it's like, hey, this guy's fishing. I don't think it's working though. It doesn't really make sense in the video. Anyway, I'm fishing. So we are talking about anxiety today and my experience with anxiety over the past 10 years, what I've learned, but I'm also fishing. And I'm not a very good fisherman, just so you know. So don't expect too much. Hopefully today's the day. Anyway, anxiety. If I had anxiety right now, if I was experiencing anxiety, going through it maybe for the first time, or you've had it for a little while, what are some things that I would do? Well, as someone that has experienced anxiety for on and off for 10 years, my first panic attack being when I was around 20, and I'm 32 now. This is what I've learned. So, first and foremost, you have to work out what you're talking about when you say, I have anxiety or I'm experiencing anxiety, because most of the time, or a lot of the time, people are not clear with what they actually mean when they say anxiety, because they don't actually know. They're just using that term because they're experiencing uncomfortable emotions, which make them feel perhaps nervous, or perhaps make them feel detached from reality, from people. They feel extra stressed. There's a lot of different ways you can explain it. So they put it under this same hat of anxiety, and I think it can be very dangerous if you don't actually know what you're talking about. So you have to work out what is making you anxious when you say that word anxious. What actually is it? Because there's a lot of different types. For instance, there's people that walk into social situations that feel anxious, they have social anxiety. There's also people that can't leave the house because they have agoraphobia. That's also anxiety. There's people that just have racing thoughts about very deep, dark, confronting things, existential things. So there's a lot of different ways that we can talk about anxiety, and you need to work out what it is that you actually mean when you say you're dealing with anxiety. You need to be clear on that, because that'll determine what's going to help you moving forward. Because when I first experienced anxiety, I used to just tell my mum and dad that I was really nervous for no reason. I also thought that I had a brain problem or brain tumor perhaps, and I was very close to getting a brain scan. Very, very close for my parents to drop $5,000 that they didn't have at the time on a brain scan for me to see if I actually had something wrong. I'm grateful that I didn't, because I felt intuitively that actually wasn't the answer, that there was something else going on, because it was situational. And this is the first thing that I would probably realize that you note, is that I guarantee whatever's happening to you at the moment, a lot of it is situational. It might not feel like it. It might just feel like, no, it just comes on randomly. But I promise you, there's no way around it. The reason that you're feeling anxious is because of the thoughts that come to your mind. And your mind is very, very, very good at associating one thing with something that you consider to be dangerous, or that might cause you to feel uncomfortable or anxious. And your mind is extremely good at doing that. So as soon as you start to feel anxiety, literally any little thing like a dog walking past on the street can remind you of the fact that you are anxious, or might cause you to become anxious. And so you might just go, it comes on randomly, but I promise you it is situational. And that's a good thing. That's the best thing ever, because either you've got genuinely something wrong with your mind, like a brain tumor, or something's actually wrong with your body, or it's just the thoughts that are coming up that are making you uncomfortable, in which case we can control that, we can fix that, and we can navigate those thoughts to be more positive and have a different perspective and outlook so that it stops happening. And I promise you that's exactly how it works. So how do you do that though? Well, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So first of all, you have to work out, what do you mean when you say I've got anxiety? You have to be clear on that. Like, what do you mean? Talk to people. Be cautious going online and just searching forums, because I promise you we'll come up with a lot of different things which scare you. But I would also say they're going to scare you because you don't understand them. That doesn't actually mean that they are something to be scared of. I remember for a very long time I was terrified of terms of things like schizophrenia or terms like that, Anything existential, I was terrified of. Things like depersonalization, derealization, I was terrified of. And you might be terrified hearing those words now, and I understand, because they make you feel like, oh no, is that me? Am I going crazy? And it's not nice, but I promise you, you are not going crazy. And all those words actually they're just words to describe a feeling which somebody has. It's not a condition which you are stuck with for the rest of your life. And oh no, now I fit in this category of depersonalization or agoraphobia or anything like that. Like, you're not now in this box where you can't escape. Like, it's not your identity. It's just a word that describes a feeling that somebody has. And that's what we do in language, is we create words in order to communicate. So if I'm experiencing something and you're experiencing something, eventually we find a lot of commonalities within our experiences, and we create a word to describe that, so we don't then just have to repeat all of the experiences that we're having every single time we converse. So when I say depersonalization, there's probably a better chance that you or my psychologist is going to understand what I mean, because that word has a definition. That's literally all it is, okay? It doesn't mean you're doomed to feel depersonalized for the rest of your life. It's just an experience. Anxiety is just an experience. It's not something that you're just stuck with forever. It's just an experience, and some of us may be prone to experiencing it more often than not, but it is something that we can very much manage and overcome to live a fairly fulfilling life. So how do we do that? Well, there's a few different pillars, I like to call them, of anxiety. There's 3 pillars. The first pillar is, what the fuck is the first pillar? I remember the 3 pillars. All right. The 3 pillars are biological, practical, and spiritual. I think they're pretty awesome, to be honest, because I think they summarize a lot of what anxiety recovery looks like. I'm not doing too good with fishing, am I? Now, all of these pillars can either help you manage anxiety or help you overcome anxiety. They're 2 very different things. I'm going to start with practical, because practical are all the tools, which are the most of the time is what people hear when they hear about anxiety recovery, is the practical tools. Now, these are things like meditation, breath work, potentially things like prayer, tapping techniques. I wear earplugs as well. I'm actually wearing them right now to desensitize yourself or lower down the sensitivity of the noise around you. Like, these are all tools, and they will help manage your anxiety. Very few of them will help you actually overcome and fix your anxiety. That's because a lot of the time anxiety does not stem from a lack of breathing techniques. It stems from an excess of thoughts about one particular topic or multiple topics, or a fear of something, which is also just thoughts about that thing. People don't get anxiety because they don't do enough meditation, but the meditation will help realign their thoughts and to change their approach on the way they think about the thing that is making them afraid. And it makes them learn to become okay with their thoughts instead of running away from them. So I'm going to change fishing spots because I'm getting pretty useless here, and then we'll talk about some of those pillars of anxiety. So these practical tools are awesome, and I would highly recommend that people try any and all of them, including even earplugs, because these things have changed my life, especially when I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. I would wear them everywhere. Even alone at home, I would wear them because it's dead silent, but for some reason my own body noises were causing me to feel anxious. So I would suggest trying as many of these tools as possible, but don't expect these tools to actually cure your anxiety, because a lot of the time that actually comes from much deeper work and fixing the foundation of what's actually causing the anxiety in the first place. The next pillar I want to talk about is biological. So with biological, it comes down to, references things like diet and exercise and that area of life. And I'm sure you're all familiar with eating healthy and exercising and sleeping better, and that'll help you feel better and live a better life. And you're probably like, yeah, we've heard that all before, but like, if you're not doing it, then you don't really understand what it means to be healthy and what it feels like to be healthy. Because if you think you know, but then you don't actually do it, then you don't know. Because if you knew, you would be doing it. And the only way to actually really figure that out is one of the things that I would highly recommend you do through your whole anxiety journey, which is to live out the question. So if you've got a lot of questions in your life about whether something is true or not, whether something is helpful or not, I would recommend, instead of just listening to a guy like myself, I would suggest that you live out the question. Even live out the question of living out the question, if that makes sense. Does living out the question really work? Well, why don't I live out the question? Gotcha. When it comes to diet, when it comes to exercise, I would highly recommend really understanding these things, because they're not nothing. They are serious, serious game changers when it comes to you managing your anxiety and actually overcoming your anxiety. For a lot of people, it literally could just be a matter of changing your diet and your anxiety can reduce by 70%. And I know you might go, well, that's silly. It's not silly, because it happens to people. And I know for myself, when I eat too much excess processed food, and especially carbohydrates, my anxiety is way worse. And so I try to eat a high protein, high fat diet. I know that that works for me. I've tried a lot of different diets over time, and I would highly recommend you watching a video down below, which is a short clip of Jordan Peterson's experience. And he was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, and he had gum disease. And just by reducing that down to only eating beef, he managed to reduce his anxiety by 70% and get off his medication for depression, and his gum disease reversed itself. And essentially what I'm trying to say is, it's amazing how much diet can influence your mind and the rest of your biology. So I promise, look into it, try to understand it. There's so much content out there, but I'll leave some links down below so you can elaborate on that a little further. The other thing is exercise. If you're not exercising, start exercising, because it'll be one of the best things you do in your entire life. Why? Why exercise? Well, do you want to feel better? Do you want to overcome your anxiety? Because what diet and what exercise actually do is they add a huge buffer zone to what you're experiencing when it comes to anxiety. And what I mean by that is, when you exercise regularly and when you stop eating so much processed crap, your body has a much greater resistance to feeling these negative emotions such as anxiety. So you build a buffer zone that essentially shields you from feeling the worst sides of anxiety. Now, what I mean by that is, if you might wake up on different days, and I know you know this, if you've experienced it, is one day you might feel like your anxiety is a 6 out of 10, and then another day you might feel like it's a 15 out of 10. And you're like, what is going on? Why is one day I'm feeling horrible and the next day it's still there? It never completely goes away, but it's a lot more manageable. And I would say that if you add exercise, certainly exercise which is cardio based as well, where you actually push yourself and exert yourself, is much more effective than if you just were to casually go for a walk, like get that heart rate up, And if you were to do that along with eating better, you're almost guaranteeing yourself that the worst it can get on an average day is a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And you can feel that it's a lot more consistent. You have more consistency throughout your mood throughout those days by exercising regularly and eating better. So when it comes to exercise though, make it fun, make it enjoyable, because otherwise you won't do it. So if you want to live a life with less unnecessary suffering, then I would highly suggest you start exercising and learning about what your body needs as far as nutrients, and more importantly, what it doesn't need as far as nutrients. Uh-oh, there's a couple of young lads coming. I might have to move spots because they might be coming up here, and I bet you they'll outfish me. They're gonna cast, like one cast and catch a fish. I've been casting for like 20 minutes. What's up, boys?
What's your camera set up for?
Oh, I was just filming some content for YouTube. Right, we're at a new fishing spot. So the third pillar I want to talk about is spiritual. And I feel like spiritual is one of the most important pillars there is, because it not only helps you manage your anxiety, a lot of the time it can help you overcome your anxiety. Because I feel like a lot of the time anxiety can stem from a lack of sense of control and living at a place of fear instead of love. And when I say spiritual, you might go, uh-oh, this is going to be honky-donkey talk, but it's some of the most important stuff that you'll ever deal with in your life will be spiritually related. When I say spiritual, let me elaborate. So what I mean by that is that encapsulates things like religion as well. So what does that actually mean? It means having a deeper understanding of your place in the world and having a foundational anchor for you to lean on and to rest upon when you have doubts or when you feel like your life is out of control or your mind is out of control. That foundation, that anchor is going to be absolutely absolutely pivotal in completely overcoming anxiety. Now, why is that? And how do I become more spiritual? I don't like religion. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that. As someone that's been an atheist for 30 years of his life, I'm now 32. I wouldn't say I'm religious, like as in a Christian. However, I've found that some of the most impactful things in my life and for my mindset has been opening my mind and becoming more open-minded towards things like spirituality and religion. Because at the end of the day, the way I see it, things like religion is evidence of humanity attempting to reach for something beyond themselves and beyond the material world and to try to make sense of their life and make meaning out of their life. If you just purely rely on science alone, it's not going to answer all your questions, okay? It's just not. Some questions cannot be answered, however, they can be understood through the lens of religion, not through the lens of science. And what I mean by that is, science can tell you what pain is. Religion can tell you how to meaningfully endure pain. A huge amount of anxiety stems from the fact that we are aimless. We don't know where to aim. We have no meaning in our life. And science is not going to tell you how to find meaning in your life. Science tells us what matter is, and doesn't tell us what matters. And to truly overcome anxiety, you need to orient yourself towards something. You need to find an aim. And how do you know what to aim for? Well, you have to figure out what's most important to you. You have to figure out where you are and where you want to be. What you will see is determined by where you're aiming. And if you're not aiming anywhere, you're essentially aimless. And when you're aimless, it essentially means you have infinite possibilities that you could tackle. And you don't know which one to choose. And that is almost no different from experiencing anxiety. Look, the last thing I'll say on things like religion and spirituality is once again live out the question. You know, if you are struggling and you're not sure, like, don't just think that you know everything about everything, because you'll just get stuck forever. What happened? The snap?
Yeah, we're going to flip this over.
Oh no. Uh-oh. That's not good. If you don't believe me, if you're not sure, dive into videos about religion or spirituality or go to church. I remember I literally turned up to church. I don't believe any of the stuff, but I went there to experience it. And it was one of the most emotional experiences I've had in the past couple of years. It was profound. Now, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, instead of just reading about it or thinking about it, I actually went and experienced it. I lived out the question, and that is one of the best things that you can do, along with finding an aim. Anyway, that's about it for today. I haven't caught any fish. Maybe I'll catch them next time. But until next time, guys, thanks. Much love.